Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo.
Having said that, let's go to Mr. Pratt whilst we await the entry of Kojo Chombo. Mr. Pratt?
Well, first of all, I must say that when I read the piece by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, I felt very, very proud. I felt so very proud, partly because I contrasted his stance on what Donald Trump had done with the stance of the just ended regime of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I recall seeing the Ghanaian president sitting in front of Anthony Blinken and reporting on another head of state, indeed in this case, the head of state of Burkina Faso, and asking for US assistance in order to subvert the interest of another African country. The contrast is so huge, so very huge. And when I read President John Dramani Mahama's article, I said, perhaps we are redeeming ourselves. We are beginning to show to the world that we will stand up for what we believe in and that we would not be kicked around anymore. Now, having said that, I think I must agree with Solomon Owusu, the other panelist, for his remarks about Cyril Ramaphosa. I was deeply embarrassed by Cyril Ramaphosa. And I was more worried when I heard some African commentators saying that, oh, he comported himself well, that in the face of the insults and the attack, he remained cool and so on. And I was wondering, and when we're being humiliated, when we're being pummeled, when we're being attacked, if you remain cool and composed, is that a credit? Is that really a credit? You know, one of the questions that I've asked is that what was Cyril Ramaphosa doing in the Oval Office? Who sent him there? Who asked him to go there? What was his problem? You see, again, I have to agree with Solomon that he knew that he was going to be humiliated. He knew that the stage had been set to embarrass Africa, to embarrass South Africa. And you can tell that from the composition of his delegation. He actually took time to select white golfers to be part of his delegation. And his administration explained that Donald Trump is in love with golf, and that the selection of white golfers was to serve as an appeasement to Donald Trump. Cyril Ramaphosa, why this behavior? Why this embarrassment? I mean, unbelievable. He knew it was going to happen. It had happened to many others before him, you understand? And yet, he deliberately walked into a trap to be humiliated. I find nothing graceful about how Cyril Ramaphosa behaved in South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa was an embarrassment to the African people, and he must be told in the face. African leaders have a duty to solidarize with themselves and with their people in their struggles against decadence, in their struggle against poverty, in their struggles against underdevelopment, and so on. The leaders of Africa must understand that it is not their duty to appease those who lead the countries which have led us to our current state of underdevelopment and poverty. And Cyril Ramaphosa is one of those leaders who has not been able to find his bearing. Now, I was struck by the fact that the leader of the country, which most supported apartheid in South Africa, is the one who has the effrontery today to look South Africa in the face and accuse South Africa of racism. sometimes we forget. Nelson Mandela, after 27 years in prison, when he was released, when he contested elections and won, and became president of South Africa, he was still on the terrorist list of the United States of America. Now, it is the United States of America, its president, which is turning around to accuse South Africa of racism. Unbelievable. I was looking for some description. And I'm still struggling to find some description. And I know that the description I have now, which I'm going to use, may be inappropriate, but it still tells the story. And it is this case of the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, the racism in this segment itself is huge. Pot and kettle, the symbolism is huge. But let me use it for now. You understand? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That president of the United States of America is talking about racist attacks. And in some of his speeches, he actually refers to what is happening in South Africa as genocide against whites.
White genocide.
Now, this is the country which is supplying the bombs which are being dropped on Gaza. 70,000 people have been killed in Gaza. 2/3 of them are women and children. This is the country which is providing intelligence to the Israeli army to bomb Gaza. They are showing the Israelis where to bomb. This is that country, Donald Trump. In the last 11 weeks, Israel has blocked food, water, medical supplies to Gaza with the approval of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has the effrontery to accuse South Africa of racism. Unbelievable. But that is what has happened. It has happened because some of our African leaders really qualify to be described as house niggers. And they truly are house niggers. You see, the African story has not been told. The true African story has not been told yet.
By ourselves.
Yes. And indeed, Sana, please allow me to say this. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been pondering. And as a result, I decided to write a book, which is finished now.
Oh,
you know.
Great.
You wrote a book in weeks.
The willow is there. So at any time, when he pours it, it's there.
So I've actually written a book on reparation. Its history, the politics, the struggles, and the law. I mean, international law. I submitted it to the publishers last week. And hopefully it should come out immediately. And I do this because it is important to tell that African story. You understand? Because if you don't tell that African story, if you don't know that history, we would always be bullied. Look, we suffered centuries of slavery. The transatlantic slave trade. What was it about? Our forebears, the strongest, because the slavers were not interested in weak people, they needed strong people. So the strongest of our population were captured and sent out to work for the United States of America, some of these Western countries and so on, without pay for hundreds of years. And so, they captured our best architects, our best medicine men or doctors, our engineers and so on, were captured. 12.6 million Africans were removed from here and sent abroad to serve as beasts of burden. The African underdevelopment is partly accounted for by this. You understand? Now, only recently, when COVID-19 broke out, it was during that period that I learned that the art of vaccination came from West Africa. the art of vaccination is African. It came from West Africa. Today, we are looking for AstraZeneca vaccines and so on. We started it. It was stolen from us. You understand? So the harm that the transatlantic slave trade did to us is huge. But you see, we even have to go back to the origin. And if you go back to the origin, it's even more shocking. What Western religion has done to us, Western religion, the Catholic Church, what it did to us is huge. Look, it was in 1452, that the Pope signed the papal bull, authorizing King Alfonso of Portugal to go and civilize the rest of the world. And by civilization meant converting the world to Christianity. And in the papal bull, please, if you have Google it, it's there. The Pope said that those who refuse to be converted to Christianity should be killed. The Pope. That those who refuse to convert to Christianity should be killed. Their wives should be seized from them, and so on. This is 1452. It is the papal bull who described African lands as vacant, lands without owners, and so on, and created the conditions for what became classical colonialism. And under classical colonialism, we had no rights as African people at all. No rights. You see, first of all, we couldn't choose our leaders. In the Gold Coast, at some point, district chief executives were appointed by the Queen of England. We are not talking about the president. District chief executives were appointed by the Queen of England. The head of state, who was the governor who sacked the Christiansborg Castle, was a representative of the Queen of England. We had no rights at all. When I was growing up, and I'm still alive, I'm sitting here, so you can imagine what my grandfather saw. When I was growing up, you go to school, your science teacher is white. Your science teacher is white. In some schools, the headmasters were white. You go to church, the priest is white. You go to hospital, the doctor is white. So everybody who mattered in a society was white. I mean, invariably, inferiority complex begins to creep in as a result of the setting. In Accra, the Rich Hospital, which is today the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, was a whites-only hospital. Black people who were there were sweepers, were servants. It was a whites-only hospital. What has today become the Accra Club was a whites-only club. You understand? This is what we have been through. Now, if you go to the United States of America, the situation is even worse. When these white vagabonds, in fact, ex-prisoners, buccaneers, and crooks, and so on, were sent to the United States of America, what did they do? They killed the Chicanos. They killed the Red Indians in order to possess their lands, to take their lands from them. They killed them. They massacred them. In fact, the United States of America today is built on the blood of Indians and the brawn power of blacks. That is why today in the United States of America, and the United States of America up to today has not overcome this racism and so on. So the Chicanos, the Latinos, the African Americans, and so on, are still subjected to extreme racism. Extreme racism. So if you live in a country like that, if you're president of a country like that, and you can turn around and call South Africa a racist society, something must be wrong. Something is not adding up.
Reverse racism.
You understand? I mean, in 1976, I visited the United States, you know, I toured about 8 of the states in the United States. And to my shock and horror, I was taken to a place called Mikusuki in the south, near Miami and so on. And I was told I was being taken to an Indian reservation. I didn't know what it meant until I got there. It's a zoo for human beings. Indians are kept there in their so-called natural habitats. And before you see, and it's happening up to today, you pay gate fee to go and see Indians in their so-called natural habitat. This is a country which is talking about human rights. This is a country which is preaching to us. In any case, look, after apartheid, and I visit South Africa quite a lot, you understand. The blacks are still completely dispossessed of their lands. And Dr. Admako Kisi spoke earlier and described the scene. I mean, you go to Joburg. Where are the blacks in Joburg? Apart from a few like Cyril Ramaphosa who have escaped the poverty net and are hobnobbing with the whites and so on, the blacks are still living in the apartheid era. Master, they live in shacks, and you know what a shack is? Homes built of curtains, or at best, discarded corrugated iron sheets. And they burn all the time, and they're harassed by the police all the time. You move from South Africa, from Joburg, and you drive 2 hours to Bella Bella, and see the tracts of land owned by white people. Indeed, until recently, any black you found in Bella Bella is a driver, a domestic servant, or farm laborer. And Donald Trump doesn't see this. He doesn't know about this. You know, and he's talking about this war song, you know, Kill the Boers. That's not a song which was composed today. Indeed, it was a war song of resistance. It was a war song of resistance, which Malema continues to sing. You understand? It's a symbol of the resistance of black people to years of torture, to years of dehumanizing existence, and so on. And then he raises this issue, and so Ramaphosa's answer is that, oh, Malema belongs to a small party. He's not mainstream. Is that the answer? Cyril Ramaphosa, is that all you could say? And then he says that in South Africa there are laws which allows everybody to express himself. That's Cyril Ramaphosa's answer to Donald Trump. Incredible, unbelievable. I cannot believe it. But you see, with leaders like Cyril Ramaphosa, how are we ever going to make progress on this continent? Today, it is hard to find an Nkrumah in the leadership of Africa. Today, it's extremely difficult to find a Modibo Keita or a Sekoturi or an America Cabral and so on. They are all looking like Cyril Ramaphosa. And that is why I'm so very happy that His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama said something which is edifying, said something which clearly shows that among this rabble of neo-colonial leaders and so on, it is still possible to find 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4, who will stand up to defend the dignity of the African people, and who would insist that African people should solidarize with themselves in the face of this aggression. And Master, a lot of people don't understand why the West is supporting the Zionists in Israel against Palestine. They don't understand. I mean, only yesterday I was talking to some friends and I said, what is happening in the world? So, you mean the Western countries can't see what is happening in Gaza and so on? I said, look, they cannot condemn what is happening in Gaza. Because a condemnation of what is happening in Gaza will be a condemnation of themselves. This is how capitalism was built. Capitalism was built on slave labor. The accumulation which led to capitalism is built on slave labor. You understand? And we have been so brainwashed that now we actually act against ourselves. And one of the most popular Christian songs is Amazing Grace. Those of you who go to church. When they start singing it in church, they sing it with passion, Amazing Grace. And so
How sweet.
do you know the history of that song? That song was written by an accomplice in slave raiding. Slave trader wrote Amazing Grace. So you black man, when you go to church and you are singing Amazing Grace with passion, you are a fool. No, it is true. Master, what is wrong with what I just said?
Out of ignorance.
But if you're ignorant, what are you?
So they are pleading. So we're pleading.
So they sing Amazing Grace with passion. A song written by a slave trader. You understand? But we have been so brainwashed. And look,
even the Achimota issue, that's why I was not happy. We used to have our hair. Our hair is literally nappy. And for that matter, nappy hair was rather an issue for whites. And should somebody go to Achimota with hair that is nappy, who are we to be? That was our natural, type of hair.
you see, of course, everybody knows that I still hold President Mills in high esteem. I think he was a decent man. He was an honest man. He loved his country and so on. But there are some aspects of President Mills's life, which tells me that he himself had become a victim of the colonial narrative. When he decided that libation pouring should be ended, because he was a Christian, I was wondering, how can such a fine man, a man dedicated to his country, a man who in his heart of hearts felt that he stood for African liberation and so on, come up with such an edict?
He wasn't a traditionalist.
It was because he, like many others, have been brainwashed, completely brainwashed. Look, it was Bishop Kwesi of Kumasi, Catholic bishop, and I want to salute Bishop Kwesi wherever he is, who came up and said, look, there's no difference between libation pouring and the Holy Sacrament. Catholic bishop, he said it, not me. I'm sure you've all heard it, that there's no substantial difference between libation pouring and the Holy Sacrament. Look, it was only recently that Africans, Ghanaians, could go to church in African robes. It was considered hidden. It is only recently that when the priests wear their cassock and so on, sometimes you see stripes of kente and so on in it. It was not allowed. African drums were banned from the churches. African drums. And compare African drums to European drums and see which produces the best rhythm and so on. But ours was banned. Ours was banned so that we become dependent even on the West for our music, for our culture and so on. The time has come to change this. The time has come to build that new Africa, whose people are proud of who they are. You see, we live in the tropics. We live in the tropics. And the tropical condition, in fact, demands that we eat some foods. Those who live in the temperate region, because of their geography, their weather and so on, have to eat some things which makes them warm. Okay? And so on. But we have been so brainwashed that today we are even refusing to eat tropical food and are eating food from the temperate zone. It is not even good for our health. Look, up to today, our legal profession believes that you need to wear a black suit, put a bib around your neck,
That's a British legal system.
wear a gown, and on top of that, wear a wig in order to look decent. Unbelievable. And we uphold that as some tradition. Imagine the kind of heat that we went through yesterday. And imagine judges going to work in that apparel. And if, God forbid, your air condition fails, by the time you get to the court building, I don't want to smell your armpit. I mean, they subject themselves to this indignity.
So you recommend that they change their outfit, like the speaker has?
It is changing in some countries.
So maybe
I understand that in Burkina Faso, it is changing, and so on. For their own comfort, don't change because of me or what I say. For your own comfort, do you feel comfortable in that clownish outfit? Do you feel comfortable in that clownish outfit? So all of these have to change. And they can only change if the true African story is told. If the achievements of the African people are highlighted. And if we begin to fight to build that new Africa, proud Africa of proud Africans, owning their own resources and exploiting these resources for the benefit of our people. It will only change if we as Africans begin to tear down these colonial boundaries. And you see, again in 1884, Otto von Bismarck, then Chancellor of Berlin, or of Germany, invited other colonial leaders, European leaders, to come and have a discussion. And the purpose of the discussion was that they should divide Africa among themselves without war. They didn't want any bloody conflict and so on. They should be able to divide Africa among themselves without war. This is 1884, the Berlin Conference. Now, what did they do? They put a map of Africa on the table. They drew pencils and used those pencils to draw lines demarcating their areas of influence. The boundaries we have today were drawn in Berlin in 1884 without the presence of any African. There was no African at the table. And we fight over these borders. Amazing, we fight over these borders. I've traveled through Africa a bit. Kodo, I've traveled through Africa a bit.
You're announcing Kojo's presence.
Yes, and when you travel across our borders, it is shocking. You see, one of the most typical boundaries is the Ghana-Togo border. Now, if you go on the Ghana-Togo border, Sana, you find one house, not two houses, one house. The kitchen is in Togo and the bedroom is in Ghana. How did that happen? It happened because those who drew that line of demarcation did not care who your uncle was, who your brother was, who spoke what language, and so on. They were just demarcating their areas of influence. They didn't care about we the Africans. So it is that today, if you cross the Ghana-Ivory Coast border, you have Nzemas in Ghana and you have Nzemas in La Côte d'Ivoire. They've been divided. That division was not their choice. You understand? And there's a very funny case of one of these African countries where two brothers, I think they were twin brothers, I'm not so sure. One was prime minister of another country and the other one was president of another country and so on. These boundaries mean nothing. They're useless boundaries that we should pull down and build the United States of Africa and integrate our economy, integrate our armed forces. And you see, up to today, any African leader who works for this aspiration is killed. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I was so sad. The intelligence officer who led the coup against Patrice Lumumba Belgium intelligence officer who led the coup against Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, actually told the press 2 weeks ago that he was responsible for killing Patrice Lumumba and that he cut Patrice Lumumba's body into 34 pieces. He's saying it. He's not being accused. He's saying it. That he cut Patrice Lumumba's body into 34 pieces and dissolved these pieces in acid and kept his front teeth as souvenir. Now, the shock of it is that this intelligence officer is still walking the streets of Belgium. Nobody has arrested him. He's not being prosecuted. Is that not shocking? Belgian society today accepts this guy. He's not being prosecuted. Nothing has happened to him. He cut an African hero, an African leader, popularly elected leader, into 34 pieces and kept his front teeth as souvenir. And he's still walking about free man. I mean, is that not shocking? Is that not shocking? Look at what they did to Chris Hani. When Mandela assumed power, they didn't want radicals around him. They didn't want people who think like me around him and so on. So they decided to eliminate them. Chris Hani was shot, point blank shot. They killed him. When Gaddafi started talking about the emancipation of Africa and its unity and so on, look at how they killed him and put him in a deep freezer. Put his body in a deep freezer in a supermarket for people to go and see. Can you imagine? They killed one of the greatest African leaders and put his body in an ordinary deep freezer, put it in a supermarket for people to go and see. And this is not in the 1960s, this is not in the 1970s, this is now. So look, Africans, let's wake up. Let's wake up. Sana, I may not live long enough. I may not live for a very long time. Anything can happen. I may die through natural consequences and so on. Because of the way I'm speaking today, I can become a target of attack of anything. They've killed people who didn't say half of what I'm saying today. So I would not be surprised if one day I'm killed and so on. But you see, we must make these people realize that the more they kill, the more we will open up our minds and fight for what is ours and build that new Africa. That they cannot stop us by killing our leaders. They can kill Bob Marley, they can kill Patrice Lumumba, they can kill Chris Hani, they can kill whoever they want to kill. But more and more progressive leaders, more and more leaders who want a paradigm change in Africa, more and more leaders who will begin to speak like John Mahama has spoken will emerge. I'm happy with what Mr. John Mahama has said, but I need to remind him, and I think that this is my duty as an African, to remind him that there's a lot of work to be done. Yes, we are happy with what he has said, but what he has said will pale into insignificance and will have no meaning for as long as we continue to harbor a U.S. military base on Ghanaian soil. For as long as we continue to harbor a U.S. military base on Ghanaian soil, his defense of Cyril Ramaphosa would not mean much.
Thank you very much. There is this Adam who is watching us via Facebook who says, in 2006 when I served on UN peacekeeping duty, I found to my surprise that the mayor of Bondoko in northern Cote d'Ivoire, Kofi Dapa, was the first cousin to then Minister for National Security of Ghana, Kan Dapa. Very interesting. There's also Kamal Dokorogo Ibrahim, who is also joining us. The struggle against racism remains the bread and butter for some of us in our professional lives. Ignorance is no longer an acceptable excuse on our part as Africans to allow it.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, so I'll be as brief as possible. And I'd like to refer to very candid statements which have been made by leading members of the New Patriotic Party. And the one that I've referred to most of the time is a statement made by Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh. And he has said in very clear language that if your government is in power and you start getting big contracts, fat contracts and so on, you should be ready for the day of accountability. And that when that day comes, you have to prove yourself. Finish. I think it's a very wise statement. You know, this is not like some statements he had made before. You know, but this is a very wise statement coming from the immediate past vice presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party. Then there's a video of something which happened on Wound to Me TV. I don't know if you have seen it. Leaders of the NPP in Ashanti, constituencies and so on, coming together to address a press conference. And their claim is that all the major roads in Ashanti which have gone bad and so on, the contracts were given to their own chairperson, Wound to Me. And that the NPP was likely to lose elections because none of those roads had been done. And so, this is NPP. It's not me. I don't know the facts. They know the facts.
No, it's true. I agree with you.
Then, there's a young leader of the NPP, also from the Ashanti region, who spoke on radio and who said that, I thought that my party promised to fight Galamsey. And that if we're sincere about our promise to fight Galamsey, then we shouldn't have waited for the Mahama government to arrest Muntumi. We should have arrested Muntumi and taken him to the police. This is an NPP man. Be that as it may, I'm also one of the people who has substantial respect for the lawyer of Mr. Entry Bosiako. I mean, everybody who has known Andy Apiakubi knows that he's an honest person. He's gentle, you know, and so on. And I'm sure that given his disposition, he will do everything possible to ensure that the rule of law applies in the pursuit of this case. You understand? There are a few things that are worrying. I cannot believe that a party like the New Patriotic Party has not been able to post bail bonds of 50 million in order to secure the release of Muntumi. I cannot believe it. Because the leaders, I mean, what they boast about, their properties that they boast about, we know are worth far in excess of 50 billion. They have multi-complex hotels. They have lands. Even the cars they drive and so on. You understand? So it is strange that these leaders actually want Muntumi out of cells and they are not able to put together the bail bond to get him out of prison. I mean, they certainly do not want him out. Because if they want him out, they can. Now, what is surprising is that these leaders include prominent lawyers, very prominent lawyers. And how they can come to the conclusion that the way to get Muntumi out of custody is to go and sit on the floor is amazing. Because they know how to do it. And if you think that the bail is excessive and so on, you know what to do. You are lawyers. You know that going to sit on the floor will not change anything. But they are not doing what they have to do, perhaps because they don't want him out. They want to keep him there. And there may be several reasons why they want to keep him there. One of those reasons could be business rivalry. who to me was getting contracts that other people would have loved to get. And if they didn't get and he got and he's in trouble, wow, they're happy. They won't say it, but they're happy. So business rivalry could be part of it. The other problem could simply be that they think that this would stop Wontumi from becoming national chairman of their party. And they don't want him to become national chairman of their party. So if this is what will stop Wontumi, then they're happy with it. They will never do anything to get him out of trouble. They will go and sit on the bare floor, go and sit on their bare floor in their suits and so on, knowing that that will not get him out of trouble. My brother, I insist, and there's good reason to insist, that anybody, even including foreigners, who are arrested for investigations, whatever, in Ghana, and it does not matter whether it's the NDC which is in power or the NPP which is in power, it must be in accord with the laws of our country. All arrests has to be lawful. You understand? All arrests has to be lawful. And I'm not even going to go back to say that this happened before. Because if we go back, the NPP's case will fall flat. You're talking about the bail sum for Wontumi. Worry. His bill was 54 million. Not 50 at the time. 54 million. There are Ghanaians whose bail bonds have been in excess of 100 million and so on. So if you go to the past, the NPP's case will fall flat.
106.
Yes. So I don't want us to do that. What I want us to do is simply to follow the law. If you think that the bail conditions are excessive, that there is a way to deal with it. But so doesn't it surprise you that a political party and its leaders, who only 5 months ago, every time there was an issue, they shouted, "Go to court." Today are refusing to go to court. What has changed? These are the people who are always telling us to go to court. Anytime we criticize, they say, "Hey, go to court." Anytime we talk about an infraction, they say, "Go to court." Today they are not saying go to court. They are sitting on the bare floor with their buttocks. Of course, they can't sit with their heads. Once I finish.
Well, thank you.
Go and look at the demonstration.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
What do you see?
She wants to see that. What that woman wants to see. It's a very serious statement.
Oh, yes.
She wants to see men go naked.
Well, thank you.
It's been a very loaded program today. My goodness.
I have some nominees that I want to nominate for the naked demo.
Please, let's
It's okay. My son is listening to me. It's okay.
We're talking about people who are having to report to security authorities. There are people who have been notifying me every day. So June 2nd is the day when Ken Oforiatta is supposed to appear before you, the special prosecutor. So that's also another matter. A lot of people are interested in that. I can't believe. Constantly.
With this, you will come.
No, but because the special prosecutor has indicated that if he does not turn up, he will declare him a fugitive and actually go after him. That's the special prosecutors. So that one is something that we're watching. We also understand Chairman Wontumi is still in custody until that matter is disposed of. Yes, until that matter is disposed of. In fact, if you listen to Andy Apiakubi, he was not particularly happy about the application because he seems to be suggesting that I have done what I'm supposed to do as a lawyer. Just when I am about to, this thing has come to tie my hands. We'll deal with it on Monday and then we'll secure his release. Well, I wanted to do a few comments, but I'm out of time. Just that there's within the national, I had a message from a deputy national communications officer of the National Democratic Congress. That's Gordon Akogan. He's saying, okay. He's talking about NDC. Says, in as much as I want to agree with my MPP brother, is an invitation, not more decent than waiting to be smoked out by state.
Dedi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Ah nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.